91.7 FM in St. Paul. And we're super excited. We have Jeff Goldsmith in studio. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Fine. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We catch up a little bit, but for folks, tell us about how you got here, how you got to music. Just a quick introduction.
Yeah, so I got to music. I started playing violin when I was 4 in the Suzuki Violin Music Academy. So before I could do a lot, I was playing violin.
Wow.
I did that until I was 18, which sort of included multiple lessons a week in an orchestra.
I had a 4-year-old who I made her finish out the year.
Yeah.
It's very intense.
It is. I was performing in front of people when I was like 5 years old.
Amazing.
And so I for like the first 30 years of my life, it was all about performance and writing songs, and whether it was violin or guitar or voice. And then I sort of kind of let it go for a while. And then I kind of came back to it on the production side of things, and started doing more electronic-based music, which was sort of when I met you both a number of years ago. And I've gotten into film scoring as of recently, and yeah.
I think we even said back at the time, film scoring. It suits the music that you play now.
Yes.
It's just amazing. It's so. I was listening to it in the woods with my friend, and I just said, cinematic.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's always sort of been a goal, at least within the last 7 or 8 years, when I got back into this, to get into film scoring. I think when we spoke before, I'd done a little bit of scoring work. But yeah, I got really inspired the last couple of years, just because I had some struggles making this album, and film scoring just sort of came into the forefront at that point. So
now we're at a crossroads, and I want to go one direction and the other direction, but I'm going to start a little bit. I'll ask you about the album.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the film scoring. How did you get into it, and how does it work? How does it fulfill you?
Yeah. So initially, I'll preface with this. The reason I started film scoring specifically was a scene in The Social Network. So Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did that score, and there's a scene in that movie where Mark Zuckerberg betrays his best friend, and I know the feeling of betrayal, but I don't think I'd ever heard the sound of betrayal, In that scene where he goes into the office and his friend betrays him, like, that music, it sounds like betrayal. It feels like betrayal. I'd never felt that way before, listening to, like, a score. And I was like, I want to do that, And that just stuck with me. And so, yeah, I did a couple of commercials, and then I met a guy named C.J. Renner. He's a local director. He's a buddy of mine, yeah.
Yes, an artist.
Yes.
Does comic books or graphic? No, I'm trying to remember.
He does a number of different things.
I know CJ. That's awesome.
But he does some directing, and I did a couple of short films with him, and he was really sort of welcoming to me. I didn't grow up around here. I grew up in northern Illinois, and so a lot of the film community has very deep roots, and so you sort of hit some walls when you're not from here with that.
Yes.
But CJ was just so welcoming and cool, and I had such a positive experience with him that I just kept doing it and kept trying to meet people and kept trying to get gigs, and it just sort of took off. And so I still continue to do it. I just started scoring a horror short this week. A great director named Nicholas Fritz, local to here as well. And yeah, kind of still grinding at it. So
that's amazing. Now my question is, when you started, now I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question, because do you think, I wonder what betrayal should sound like, or do you hear sounds and say, ooh, that's betrayal, in your daily life, like that dog sounds like joy? Or
to me, it's like about the feel of things. I've always sort of been obsessed with like the feeling of music sometimes, and not what someone's telling me necessarily. It's about how I hear something, and then how I process that. So for like betrayal, yeah, it's something I don't think I'd be able to describe, you know? It's just like a deep pit feeling, you know? So for me, when I'm scoring things, a lot of times it's like the feeling of things, and I have to sort of navigate and figure that out, you know? Because scoring's a little weird, where it's different from making my own album, where I can just do what I want and be me. But for scoring, it's collaborative, right?
Yeah.
And I have to find like that emotional connection with the film, and so sort of finding those feelings and those like feelings and sounds, that can take a while, you know. And I have to sort of experiment around, and I use a lot of synthesizers, and I do a lot of sampling in my music, and it can just take time, you know, to sort of sort through that.
Sort of a chef of sound.
Yeah. I've always thought of my music a little bit more as like a painting versus like a song, you know? I think it's like, because yeah, you have to sort of brew a bunch of different things and kind of end up where you end up, so to speak, you know?
Should we play a song and
Yes,
then come back and
sure.
talk a little bit about the album?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to tell us about the song first, or when we?
Yeah, so we can play Before Dawn first. So this is the first track off the record. And yeah, I think this was the song where I kind of realized like I had something special going on, and I decided to sort of keep creating in this area, so to speak.
Okay.
Before Dawn.
Before Dawn, Jeff Goldsmith. This is why we get gray hair. And we're still recording here, but anyone listening on the radio,
Okay.
just do that, so that.
Okay, cool.
I met CJ Renner at the Art and Bloom at.
Yeah, he was telling me about that.
Yeah. It did a very artistic flower, in fact, and I'm trying to remember it was a very manly looking woman in a dress, and he just had like a pink rose. That was it. It was way more artistic than flower arranging, you know, in that balance of two. And I was with Anya, and my 20-year-old had to be about this big at the time, and she just asked a million questions, and then after that we kind of got to know, you know, probably social media.
Yeah, well, he's a great guy. He's become a really good friend of mine, you know.
Well,
yeah, I was lucky to have such a positive experience in that first go round, because I don't know if I would have kept going after it if it hadn't been so positive, you know.
That's good.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
He always had a lot of stuff going, and
yeah, super creative guy.
I think I wrote for the Twin City Daily Planet, and I said, "Wow, my girlfriend covers your job." I'm like, "Well, she thinks I'm getting paid for this." Just let her keep thinking that. I was like, "Really, tech writing? Is that what you wanted?"
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Have it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just some theater stuff. I just remember I'd run into him at really interesting places.
Yeah. He's one of those guys who's always got his hands in like a bunch of different pots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a number of people in the film community I've met like that, where they're more artists than anything specific. I sort of think I'm probably similar. You know, it's more about just making art. You know. And so it's always fun meeting people like that.
Yeah.
You know, because not everyone is, you know.
No.
Well, then you kind of have you network out, and then that inspires probably more creativity for you too.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Oh, people commenting.
Oh, I was like, what are you doing?
Sometimes I gotta just check the make sure we're still rock and rolling.
I know the noise behind makes me think like going through the day, but then you have your chatter in your head going, da, da, da.
Yeah. Those sort of sounds in the back. Yeah. Almost feels like a swarm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a kid, were you too like
sounds?
Very,
Yes.
like if it was just more intense for you?
Yeah, I think So, part of the Suzuki Academy is like they taught me at least at the time, we learned by hearing things. Like they taught us how to read music as well, but it was all about repetition, right? So every time I was in the car with my mom, she was playing these violin tapes, right? So because of that, I processed sounds really young, So as I got older, I don't think I necessarily knew what it was, but I was always paying attention to what was happening around me, These days I've gotten better about just recording it. I was taking field recordings before I came in here, actually.
Yeah, why not ask you about that when we're on air? Yeah,
it's just like there's just, you can always capture really interesting stuff when you just sort of stop and listen,
Yeah.
So,
makes you more in the moment too.
Yes, which I struggle with. So.
Yeah, well, we all do.
Yeah, for sure.
We're all trying to do 47 things in zero time.
And with technology, it's like we're all everywhere at once, right? How do we slow down?
Yeah.
And I found that for me, that's like a very therapeutic thing, just like sitting and listening. So it's a little trippy here in my music on
I
the
know,
radio.
I bet. Like 30, 40 seconds. Yeah. I'm just always intrigued because I always feel like, I connect with lyrics, but then when I've
Listen to something like
nope,
this.
it's not. It's the feeling.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes we don't think about that stuff,
Yeah.
Before Dawn by Jeff Goldsmith, who we have in studio. Hello. I find that so soothing to listen to.
Thank you.
It's just that everybody should I work from home, but everybody should listen to this on their way home from work.
Yeah, I think there's sort of an ambient calming element to a lot of it, I think part of it's the piano, but there's also some field recordings sort of in the background, which give it sort of this weird ambiance.
Yes.
Again, just soothing stuff. I don't know. I sometimes find that kind of stuff really, soothing and inspiring, which is weird, I think weird to some people, but not for me. So.
Well, and what I like so much about your music, and I can listen to a lot of ambient. I was a big fan of noise for a long time, harsh ambient. So I can lean well into that. But you have a nice blend of the field noises and the synth sounds, and then the piano, and it's the meshing of all of those worlds that I think adds a depth.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that like I was saying when this was playing, I'm really interested in the feeling of music, like I love lyrics and I love being told a story, but sometimes like the music and the way it feels tells an even bigger story. And I think with this record, that's very much what it was, I think that the feeling of the album kind of tells the story,
When you were putting this album together, what was the feeling that inspired or started or your take?
So I think, so to explain this record, you have to go back a few years. A couple years ago when we last spoke, I had just finished my last record, May You Find the Light, For the Devil Knows He's Right. And I just started making music again, which is what I'd sort of done up to that point. And I ran into a lot of problems initially. And I think what happened was I was starting to get better at the production side of things, right? When you're sort of working in a DAW and putting your music into something, you don't realize initially that you're getting better at those things. But then suddenly I was realizing it because I could hear it, right? And so I found myself in these endless revisions of songs, and I kind of just had to stop creating for a while, at least an album of my own, and focus on the film scoring. And so when I finally came back around to the idea of doing this, it was a couple of friends of mine. I had met them for coffee, and they're both two composers based out of Canada, Michelle Osis and Terry Ben, good friends of mine, and they, can't remember which one of them told me, but they were like, it sounds like a good mission statement to try and record another record that's yours, you know? So when I think when I started to try and do this again, that was just the goal, to create something that was mine. When you're scoring films, like, part of the collaborative process is some of those things don't become mine anymore. They become the film. They could become a part of a larger story, right? But I wanted to tell my story. And so I think I was just initially inspired by creating sounds and textures in the beginning, and not necessarily thinking about a song or where I needed to take it, you know? At least that's where it started in the beginning, I would say.
And then where did it go?
Yeah. So about halfway through, I went up north. I'm scoring a feature film that was getting shot up in like the Brainerd area. And so I went up there for a weekend to just do some field recordings. Just kind of hit the road. I was a little burned out at the time. And once I started doing these field recordings, I sort of started thinking a lot about this artist named Jeremy Michael Ward, who was a member of the Mars Volta. He did some work with At the Drive-In. I collaborated with his cousin Jim Ward, who played in At the Drive-In in Sparta. And he used field recordings, Jeremy did, in context to songs in sort of a really interesting way. I remember listening to him when I was younger in college, and just being sort of baffled by, you'll be listening to this song and then suddenly you hear like birds chirping. And I remember at the time thinking like, this is kind of genius, but it's kind of weird, you know? Yeah. So yeah, like I was sitting out there doing these field recordings, and I was sort of thinking about him a lot. And I don't know, the world sort of slows down when you're out listening, you know? And those field recordings just became really special to me. And when I came back, I was just really inspired to like find a way to pivot those into the songs. And yeah, it just really helped carve out the rest of the record. You know, it gave it this sort of natural ambiance, you know? I don't know if I necessarily would have been able to do in my studio, you know? So.
I like how your music, how you were just saying, like, how they threw in birds or whatever. Like, we want to make sense of everything, so this, you know, it's just kind of like autopilot, and when you throw that curveball in, actually makes you like redirect and have your brain engage rather than here this
Yes.
It's such a cool way.
Yes, no, I totally agree. And I think I don't know, with making music, you know, a lot of times it's like some of the best, greatest stuff comes out of spontaneous moments, right? Without thinking things. It's a little different when you're dealing with electronic music and dealing with a lot of the tools I use. And I think that was sort of the idea I had in my head, was to not think about any of that stuff, to just let the music do its thing, you know? And I think that's what sort of makes this record a little special. You know, it's very much like a moment in time kind of thing, you know? And I'm just really proud of it, you know?
I'm kind of getting my head around about how difficult that must be when you know, you could make it perfect, and in quotations, perfect, because music doesn't need to be perfect.
Yes.
I mean, it shouldn't.
Yes.
You know, there's no.
It's like a constant battle. I mentioned when I came into this studio, you know, I grew up, like, I'm very anti. Like, I grew up as a punk, you know, listening to Fugazi and, you know, very like Rage Against the Machine, very anti-establishment, you know. Because of that, I when I play music, I have this sort of attention span problem where it's like, it's just, I play the part, it is what it is, you know? But when you're dealing with production, those two don't fit together, you know? And it's a constant push and pull, you know? I struggle with it.
maybe the field recordings helped solve some of it, because that is a whole different element to it. I mean,
For sure. I think it helps slow me down, and again, I think sometimes I do my best work when I'm not thinking about things, when I'm just trying to play, you know? Because again, when you're dealing with like scoring a film, you have to be thinking constantly, right? Like, where am I going to put this? Where does this need to go? Oh, is this the right sound? It's not, you can't film score on autopilot.
No, not well.
Right. And so I think part of this was just sort of like playing and letting it go, you know, and not having to sort of think about some of those things, you know.
It's a fairly pedantic question. When you go to get field sounds, how do you do it? And I really mean, like, do you say, I'm going to go down to the river today, I'm going to and just walk around?
I mean, a lot of times it's, I did this a couple of weeks ago. I just told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to get in the car and just drive just east. So I just drove east into Wisconsin, and I wound up at a railroad track, just kind of out in some back roads, and I just sat by the railroad track with my dog for like 2 hours just recording, you know? So a lot of times it's stuff like that. It's just sort of getting out into the world and finding a weird little spot. Other times, it's maybe I want to try and get a very specific sound, you know? So I'll go to like a swing set, you know, and I'll sort of position the mic in a certain way to get those sounds. But then I'll take those sounds and I'll do other things with them. So like, you know, the swing sound, for example, I'll detune it and I'll make it like a few octaves lower, and suddenly what was a swing suddenly sounds like something entirely different, maybe a demonic sound or like something weird. You find interesting sounds and artifacts in just naturally occurring things when you start listening to what's happening. You know, especially in like in an EQ or in like a DAW, when you start EQing things, you just hear really weird artifacts, I guess you could say. So
it's sort of, I walk in the woods underneath the airport on a pretty regular basis, and I'm amazed. And I've done it for years and years with a friend of mine. Yeah. And sometimes the woods are so quiet. Yeah. And sometimes they're so loud. Yeah. You know, I think to be able to capture that, like to capture the sound of snow falling at night. Yes. You know, that absolute silence. Yes. Must be.
Yes. Oh, agreed. I mean, so in that first song, Before Dawn, right? When it starts out, you can hear this sort of sound come in. That is an air conditioner in a motel room. So I manipulated and processed in a certain way that it sounds kind of like wind, but not really. It sounds kind of familiar, but not what you know what it is. It's an air conditioner processed through a bunch of stuff that creates a really interesting, very deep feeling sound, you know? I agree. I think when you start to sort of listen, you find really interesting things in the world, you know?
Well, and fun to hear about how you can manipulate it to bring it, again, to a whole nother layer of...
Yes. Yeah. I think that, for me, that's where I get really excited. Like, I love, like, creating something weird out of something else. Like, I love taking something and then creating something else out of it, you know? So I get really jazzed when I'm listening to some of those things and I find something weird, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to take that and I'm going to see what else I can make out of it, you know? And sometimes that'll make a song, you know? Like, one sound will be the basis of something else, or a cue, you know? I did a short film called Colette with a director named Jack Walterman, and for a lot of the stuff in that film, I was using recordings I did in my garage. So I was taking like very metallic type sounds, like hitting things, and just sort of changing those, and that was basically the whole basis for the score. So, yeah.
This is when the pop-up video of his music would be so cool.
Exactly.
Pop-up video.
Really, like, because your music always takes me on such a personal, unique journey of all the layers. Like, I'm like, where am I going? You know, it's like, it reminds me of like that Sleep No More with Macbeth, and everybody's, you can't talk, you have this mask on, and you go
just
through.
have to, for folks who are listening, the Sleep No More is a performance haunted arty house in New York, and they have five floors. Five floors, and they kind of put you up in an elevator and kind of push everybody in different directions, and they make you wear a mask so you can't really find each other. And as you walk through, everybody gets a different story.
Oh,
so. Yeah.
I'm going to have to get that info from you guys, because I'm going to New York in like a month.
Oh my God.
That sounds cool.
Good.
That sounds cool.
But it made me think of that experience because you had no idea.
Really good,
I know. And so personal, like what you locked in or what it made you feel.
I love hearing you say that.
Yeah.
It just makes me so happy. I love hearing that people can connect with this and think about it in different ways. And I think that that's what's cool about it is, you know, when you have a record with a bunch of vocals and a bunch of lyrics, a lot of time it's telling you one very specific story, right?
Yep.
But this record is like, you know, it's 90% instrumental.
Yes.
So there's so much room in it for you to figure out what it means to you. And I think that, I don't know, I just love hearing that kind of stuff, you know? I've talked to my brothers about it a lot, and they've both told me, you know, interesting things that they've felt when listening to it. And I just love hearing those kinds of stories. So,
Should we play another song?
Sure. Yeah. The Truth Has a Way of Showing Itself. So this was my older brother mentioned this was his favorite track off of the record. So, yeah.
Okay.
Can you share what your brother took away from?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he got very specific. I think he was just telling that he had some feelings or some memories when he was listening to this. And I don't know. I just love that it took him to a place. I don't know. I'm sure you both get this. Like, I get nostalgic with music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to hear someone listen to something for the first time and then have nostalgia about something else, that's just really cool.
Yeah.
Especially for me.
Yeah.
Like, how cool is that to create something and then it takes them someplace else that I wasn't there?
Yeah.
You know? I just think that's a really beautiful thing, you know?
And too, like, you can have 3 kids grow up in the same house and some experience with the parents, and each one has I don't remember it that way or whatever.
Right.
And that's
Absolutely.
what kind of the music, I was like, where's this going to go for him? Mm-hmm. So, I just think, it's such a personal journey, whatever it pulls out or brings.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I think sometimes we don't process music in that way, and I think it's a cool thing when we do, you know? I think, again, when you're talking about instrumental music, it just sort of, it brings up a lot inside of us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it is very trippy listening to my music.
I know. It totally makes me think of Sleep No More. Like, it is so
unfortunately,
perfect.
I don't think it's running anymore.
But they're doing other things.
They're doing,
like it.
they're opening up something else soon.
Cool.
It's a Matrix Hotel or something?
You're so close. You're so close to it. The Kittrick?
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm doing Matrix No, you're right. It's not Matrix, but it's something like that.
I would have never gotten it. The McKittrick Hotel.
Okay.
McKittrick Hotel?
McKittrick Hotel, yeah.
Cool.
I would have never, if you hadn't said that, I would have never gotten it. So they have a speakeasy there. Sleep No More, these final weeks. Yeah, so it ended that show ended.
Okay.
Yeah,
you need to look it up.
I will.
Yes.
I will.
Because it is. Oh my God, it makes so much
sense.
sense.
And I haven't been to New York.
Ooh, wait, actually, here. Final extension through December 4th. They keep extending it. I thought they had finished it.
Please go.
I will, and I'll take pictures and send it to
Oh
you.
my
Yes.
God.
Tag you guys on social
With
media.
the weird, yeah.
Well, freak out.
Yeah,
It is,
yeah.
It is
It's-
by far one of the coolest things I've ever done.
Really? Wow.
The friend that I
cool.
went with, so everybody gets on the elevator, and then they sort of say, "Don't stick with your pack."
Yeah.
Like, make sure she's.
Yeah.
Somehow she had trouble with her mask, and then they ended up pushing her into a wheelchair
Yeah.
and took her out a whole different. So she had an entirely. And we were
That's
in there for
crazy.
hours, and
Yeah.
I didn't run into her again.
That sounds so
See,
cool.
and that trips with you
Oh,
too.
Yeah.
It
Like
does.
I was like, what?
She's like, "Have you seen all the naked people?" I'm like, "No, I went the wrong way."
I didn't get that part.
I know. I
Yeah, it
both
almost
those
sounds
people
like
in the asylum. Yeah,
It's like a choose your own adventure sort of
very,
thing almost.
and you
Yeah.
can interact. I think the
Yeah.
deal is you can't talk, but they
Yeah.
will and they will interact
Cool.
with you. So it's absolutely
Yeah.
I need to check it out.
You
I'm
have
so
to.
glad you
And
brought
you
it up.
have to try to get your tickets right away.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah, I
it'll
will.
sell.
I will.
But
yeah.
I cannot wait to
Hear me.
yes, and what it triggers for you, and
Yeah.
I swear you will make music after that.
Oh, that's
yeah.
great.
It's done.
okay. Truth Has a Way by Jeff Goldsmith on Mostly Minnesota Music and WMCN 91.7 FM in St. Paul. And we are lucky enough to have Jeff in studio.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Yeah, the music is just, well, we've been chatting away.
I know.
We've been chatting away between
Thank you.
songs, but yeah, I mean, it's just,
Yeah, that particular song, I feel like it's kind of an interesting one because as it starts off very gentle and then it gets really intense and aggressive as it goes, and I feel like the title summarizes it. The truth has a way of showing itself where sometimes things aren't as pretty, on the inside.
that is what I always think with, songs without lyrics, that
Yeah.
the title is so essential. And how much information do you like to impart in the title?
Yeah.
Like that.
I mean, I think that I tend to think about titles as I probably don't put as much thought into titles sometimes. A lot of times a title's just a title, but with that particular one, yeah, I think I threw that down as like a temporary title, and then it just stuck, which isn't necessarily the case always, and so it just felt right. I think I named it quickly, if I'm trying to remember. Yeah, and it just sort of it summarized everything,
Just-
you know.
Straight from the gut. right?
Yeah, I mean, I let me try and put this another way. The record's called This Beast, and it's called that because, creativity to me is very much like a beautiful thing and a struggle. I'm constantly thinking about it, right? I don't have the ability to not think about it. I think my wife doesn't love that about me
Right,
sometimes
right,
because,
yes.
she'll be saying something to me and I'm like, why didn't I put that sound in there
Yeah.
earlier, you
Yeah.
know? So for me, part of, being as creative as I am is sort of like a blessing and a curse. It's a beast,
Yeah.
essentially, right? And that particular song, it just, when I started bringing it to, the sort of meltdown end, it just felt very dark, and I was pulling out some dark sounds out of me, and yeah, I mean, again, sometimes things aren't pretty, and I think, for me, I've certainly struggled with mental health issues, and, being able to create out of that has been I'm lucky that I'm able to do that, because I can get it out there and throw it into something,
The not pretty is essential too.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we'd all be living in Barbie world.
Yes.
I
yes.
think it's the ugly, the harsh.
Yes.
Is important.
I mean, for me, I that's what I love
Yeah.
about music. I love dark music, and I have a little bit of darkness in my personality. I've always sort of been that way. I'm drawn to darker things, and I like dark music. I want
Yeah.
to. I sometimes music isn't supposed to make you feel good, and sometimes dark music really brings out that side of things, you know?
It's cathartic.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
just listening to the right music at the right time will help you get through things, help you get through, you know, it's...
Well, yeah, and I'm paraphrasing, but I know Ian MacKaye said that at one point, like, you know, sometimes music has to be challenging the listener, you know? And so I'm always trying to push myself and push the sounds I'm doing, and some of those things that come out are uncomfortable, you know? It's the nature of making the kind of music that I do. So, but again, those are the things that I like, right? I love, you know, I love the Downward Spiral, right? And that is a really dark album, you know? But like, those are the things that I get attached to, you know? I like that sort of uneasy beauty in things. I find a beauty in darkness, you know? I think that there's something special about upsetting things sometimes, you know?
Makes us feel alive.
Yeah.
The heart is pumping, like you're like,
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I think that there's some, I mean, I think of Drone Not Drones.
Yeah.
And I think of the first couple of years of Drone Not Drones.
Yeah.
You know, me and 8 dudes in sleeping bags, you know, and now, and I'm not there the whole time either because it has grown to be so much bigger. I don't know if it's a sign of our times or just the growing popularity and knowledge of that kind of, as you say, music that's more challenging.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're sort of going into an interesting area right now with music. I think that you're seeing and hearing a lot more electronic music, and I think you're hearing things like that where you have 12-hour drones. Like, people are pushing listeners into tougher things to listen to, which I think is great. I love people challenging the norm, you know? I've always been all about that. So I think we'll continue to hear more of that type of stuff, you know?
Well, I guess it's the progression of, and I choose punk music. That'd been my first, you know, and at the time, of course, everybody, that's just garbage, you know, and, you know, it was challenging in a different way.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I agree, and I don't know. Part of that, though, too, is also like the sort of the aesthetic of of punk music. Like, it's just there's like a culture there, you know? And I do love that culture. I love that sort of, like, again, I guess is the best way I can sort of think of it, you know? I mean, that stuff is always finding a way into my music somehow, I think, you know?
It makes me try to think if there's a culture of sort of this more challenging music now, the ambient and the...
I mean, so just from my vantage point, yes. I think that there's people out there that want different types of music, you know? I think a lot of people have gotten sort of sick of the normal whatever, just the cookie cutter stuff, right? And so because of that, you're getting just interesting, unique stuff. I mean, that stuff has always been there. Yeah. But you had
like the John Cage.
Right. Right. I mean, the microphones, you know, like you always had to search for it. Yeah. Back in the day, it was always a little bit harder. But these days, you know, that's one of the great things about streaming is that you can find some really great stuff out there. And it's not that challenging to find it. I've also found that, like, you know, I've tried to be a little bit more active on Bandcamp, especially with this record. And I've found some really great artists out there on Bandcamp that kind of fly under the radar, I think. But they're doing some just really interesting, cool stuff, you know? And I think that that's just really special right now. We're kind of in a special time, you know?
And I think a lot of the folks who like to listen to that kind of music are kind of flying under one radar or another. Yeah. To some degree. I do remember going to see, maybe it was Paul Metzger. So it was somewhere, something in between. Maybe more experimental. Literally playing under a bridge during COVID. And I was like, this is... Yeah. And
makes sense.
Yeah. You know, this is where it's meant to be.
And that's the cool stuff, right? Like I mentioned this to you guys. You asked me if I wanted to perform, and I've kind of been exploring a live set. But I think that that's part of it is, like, for me, playing a live set, it's got to be unique. It's it's got to feel real.
Yeah.
It's got to be something maybe a little different, right? Like I don't want to just throw me in front of people with a bunch of synths and, you know, do a bunch of ambient textures for a while. That's not interesting to me. So I've been sort of exploring some other stuff with performance and trying to figure that out. But I've been thinking about that a lot when I'm doing it. Like, what's going to be cool, right? What am I going to find cool?
Right.
Well, it just adds the layer of the feeling that you are giving us.
Yeah. And it's got to feel genuine, you know? But yeah, it's like people performing under bridges or performing out in the woods. I saw this band one time at 7th Street Entry that was performing on the floor. And I just remember like thinking that was so awesome to just like, now we don't need stage. We're just going to perform in the crowd, you know? And they set up like some weird synths and some weird organs and, you know, that was cool. That was different, right? It was very against the norm. Like, I love that, you know? Change it up.
Yeah.
I think that you should play at the Walker, the thing that's built into the side of the hill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That would be very cool.
Heather and I we had a list of places.
Yeah, that was
during COVID when you couldn't be anywhere else. You'd be walking around here.
That would be really
that
cool.
would be cool.
Ooh, that gives me the chills.
But
that's actually a great idea. I don't know. I kind of want to figure out a way to combine sort of the film stuff with the music. So I'm sort of writing some songs with performance in mind, and I'm thinking about visuals as well, and trying to figure out how I can sort of navigate that. Again, I don't want to just throw up random stuff behind me. I want it to sort of be very curated to the music.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like setting would probably be a big part of that, right? So like finding a cool place to do it at, and again have some sort of engagement with the crowd, you know.
Yeah.
Again, I love live music and I love performing, but these days I am always sort of looking for something different when it comes to live music. I want something unique, you know? Just the sort of
experience.
Maybe a little bit more experience. Maybe I don't know. Maybe more interactiveness somehow.
Yeah.
Right? How do we figure out a way to sort of make the concert experience more interactive for the people that are attending as well? Because you know, I think there's something there. You know.
But I like that. Yeah, you get the energy and the vibe of the people too. Like each show would be so much different, rather than where are we tonight? Oh, this is Minneapolis. Oh,
right.
Nebraska. Wherever. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, and I think that there's something very noble in doing that. I don't want to downplay any artist that's out there performing the same stuff all the time. As someone who did that for a long time, I get it, but that's just not what I'm personally interested in doing. I want to do something a little different. It's got to feel genuine and unique. Otherwise, to me, it's like I won't even bother, you know? So, yeah.
And they're different. They're different in this way. Devani's is not like the Punch Pizza.
Yeah.
You know, they're both pizzas.
Right.
But they're just very different.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And challenging music is for a different time in a kid.
Yes.
And sometimes you just want Devani's, and sometimes you want. I mean, just use a very basic example.
No, that's
there's room for everything.
Great example, and I totally agree. And I think what I'm finding is that the people that have been interested in my music over the years, that sort of reach out to me or find me, that's the kind of stuff they're interested in too. Typically, the people that find my music, I get along with because I'm like, oh, hey, what are you making? Yeah. I want to know what art you're making because we have a lot in common, right? Mm-hmm. And those types of, I feel like the people that find my music, we have a lot in common, and I feel like they would want something like that, you know? I don't think that, again, it's just sort of like finding your certain audience base, you know? So, yeah.
You say in a funny way, that is what streaming is best for.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find all different.
You really can, and I don't know. I've always been obsessed with digging for weird music. I mean, I remember going to there's this record store in Rockford, Illinois, when I was younger called Media Play, and I just remember going there, and I would buy CDs based on their cover. So like I had this phase where I was just trying to buy I was trying to find weird music, you know. Because there's something really cool when you find a band or an artist that nobody knows, and then you know them.
Yeah.
You know, like it's sort of like, yeah, that's my band.
Yeah.
You know, and I love that feeling of finding unique, weird music.
Well,
you know,
and here, because I know which one for me. What? Think of one or two bands that you remember from back in the day where you're like, oh yeah, I was the first to know about.
The very first one I think of is this band called Dredge. They were out of San Diego area, sort of a California band. And they had this record called Leitmotif that came out in like '99. And the cover of the album was just brown. And it just had the name of the record on it, Leitmotif. In sort of like a weird font or something, and the song names were really strange. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
It was like Movement 1, 40 degrees north, and then and I remember being like, this has got to be pretty cool, and it was a great album. And I saw Dredge probably 5 or 6 times after that.
That's awesome.
So yeah. Microphones was another one. I bought the album The Glow Part 2. Another random buy, I think at Virgin Music Store in Chicago, and another just really great album, sort of obscure kind of indie rock from Pacific Northwest, and I love searching for random stuff. So, do you remember yours?
Hawaiian Pups.
I
just love them. It was way more pop punk alternative, but I just
yeah.
How about you, Heather?
Oh God, I don't know. Don't do that to me.
All right.
I'm not a cool kid.
Hawaiian Pups is hardly.
The one I found recently, this was like a year ago, that I've been obsessed with is her name's Sierra, and she's from I believe Germany. She's sort of an electronic body industrial body music is what I think they call it. IBM. And I found her randomly. I was sort of in like a Spotify deep dive, go down the rabbit hole, and I found her, and she has this record called Left Behind. It came out a couple years ago, and it's one of my favorite records ever. She's fantastic.
All right.
We'll
write that one down.
I'm doing it right now.
Should we play another song?
Sure.
Look at the old clock on the wall.
Yeah.
What would you?
Why don't you play the last track on the album, After Dusk? Good. You like that one?
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
What is the one? Sorry.
After Dusk.
Got it.
Yeah.
I put it in order, so sorry. I was like, ooh, that's not my last one. Now I got to do some Jeff Goldsmith deep dives and things.
I mean, keep in mind that's very electronic,
No, I like it.
She's great, man. She just does some really awesome stuff with synths and the energy. Like whenever I need like a pick me up, like if I'm driving somewhere, that record is that's my go-to.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. You'll have to let us know if you do a show or an experience. Because I would. I want to see.
I'm definitely planning on doing it. It's just like I said, I have to figure it out first. It's just been, when you do performance for 30 years and then sort of stop like I did and then start doing something else, they feel separate almost. And I'm trying to figure out a way where they feel the same,
Do you know Rebecca Fritz? Muskelunge? She was the lead singer for Muskelunge.
Oh, the name sounds familiar.
I should connect the two because she is trying to do more synth-based,
cool.
And I see her wrestle with the same thing.
Yeah.
So when you said that, like,
I
know who.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's just starting to perform again.
Oh, cool.
And she kind of got out of the game for
Yeah, I would love to connect.
Okay.
Yeah. And that stuff to me is always really inspirational and informative. I love talking to other artists that are sort of like me and sort of understanding their journey. Because it just sort of helps me and it puts it into context a little bit.
And you're going through a unique. You've been on one road and you're
it's like another road. Right. Exactly. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but it makes sense to me. They feel separate almost.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and what's funny is that once you said that, I can see with Reba that it's
yeah.
There's a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
To do.
It's just finding again, genuine. Just that word is always coming to mind when I'm thinking about this, because it's you can't not be genuine when you have a guitar in your hand performing in front of people, right?
Yeah.
But it's different when you're dealing with electronics and samples and like that stuff feels genuine to me when I'm creating it. But when I put it in front of me at a table, it's different, you know? And so I'm like, again, I've been writing songs with guitars again and sort of incorporating these things and trying to merge them a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's a process.
Yeah,
you know?
I think I
Yeah.
have to connect you with.
Yeah.
I just a little business after this.
Yeah.
We'll probably just kind of.
Oh yeah.
Finish up because we students come in and
You're
I like
cool.
to make sure that
You're totally cool.
Yeah.
Do your thing.
I like 2 minutes.
Okay.
It's giving us a little
Yeah, I think that she would have, because she's trying to do some of that too, and
Cool.
she did some solo stuff. And last time I saw her play, she played some of the solo stuff, and some of her more synth-based stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the name sounds really familiar. I wonder if I've crossed paths at some point. Again, I feel like I meet a lot of people these days, and again, when you're meeting people digitally, it's always a little different, you know?
Yeah.
definitely.
I don't know. I've been trying to spend a lot of time like connecting with people that get engaged with my music. But yeah, digitally it's not the same.
You're right.
It's like shaking someone's hand and remembering their face, you know?
Yeah.
So
But you can digitally meet people all over the world too. I mean, it's funny because there are cool things about. I mean, in person is.
Oh, 100%.
But yeah.
There are benefits to the sort of the Zoom world, you know. I mean, for film scoring for sure.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, being able to collaborate with people out in LA or Kansas City or whatever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have Zoom.
Right. It's my day job is broadband.
You have like 10 seconds.
After Dusk, Off This Beast by Jeff Goldsmith. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this was so much fun to catch up again and hear all the stuff that you're doing. So
absolutely, you both have been so cool to me over the years. So I really appreciate you both having me on, and I love what you both do. It's just so great for the music community around here. So thank you.
Very kind. Thank you. Yeah, and tell folks where they can find you online.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, jeffgoldsmithmusic.com. Otherwise, I'm also pretty active on Instagram. Look me up, Jeff Goldsmith Music. You can just look me up by name, Jeff Goldsmith Music, and I'm pretty active everywhere. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Nice.
Back to some scary music. What have we got coming?
We have the Black Widows with Love Witch #1. Thank you.
Thank you.